Hello! If you had asked me a year ago whether I'd ever end up half naked in a freezing cabin with my straight best friend, watching him undress while pretending I wasn't completely losing my mind, I would have laughed in your face. But that's exactly how this all started. I'd been friends with Tyler since sophomore year of college. We met in an intro to psych comm class we both hated and bonded over our mutual loathing for participation grades and overpriced coffee. Tyler was that guy everyone liked, charming without trying, constantly smiling, and somehow always in the middle of every conversation at a party without even meaning to be. He was also incredibly straight, or at least that's what I believed. No question. He'd had girlfriends, talked about girls. Hell, I'd watched him get dumped by 3 of them and eat ice cream on the floor of our apartment, like the human version of a sad dog. So when he invited me to his family's lake cabin for the weekend, just the 2 of us, I didn't think much of it, said it would be a chance to get away from the noise, clear our heads before finals. He knew I needed the break. I'd been spiraling hard after my last relationship imploded in that slow, painful way only queer heartbreak seems to deliver. The drive up was uneventful. Lots of music, gas station snacks, and Tyler trying to do that dumb falsetto thing he does when he's trying to make me laugh. And yeah, I laughed, because he always gets to me, even when I don't want him to. The cabin was deep in the woods, perched just above a frozen lake that hadn't quite thawed yet. It was old, with creaky wooden floors, faded plaid furniture, and the unmistakable scent of pine and old smoke. There was no cell service, no internet. Just a fireplace, 2 twin beds, and enough canned chili to survive the apocalypse. That first night we cooked, played cards, drank too much, and tried to light the fireplace using damp logs and 1 stubborn matchbook. It was perfect, familiar, easy, until it wasn't. It was sometime after midnight when things shifted. We were both on the couch, a little drunk, but not hammered. The fire had finally caught, flickering orange against the walls, and Tyler had taken off his hoodie, sitting back in just a t-shirt and plaid pajama pants. I remember the way the light hit his jawline, the way his laughter slowed, got quieter, more thoughtful. I remember him asking, out of nowhere, "Do you ever wish things were simpler?" I looked at him, confused. Simpler how? He shrugged, staring into the fire, like people just said what they meant, instead of dancing around stuff all the time. I didn't know how to answer that, because I did wish that. I'd spent years not saying what I meant, especially not to him, so I said nothing, just nodded, thought the moment would pass. But then he turned toward me, his voice softer this time. "Is it weird that I've been thinking about you lately?" I blinked. "Thinking about me how?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even, though my heart was doing this strange thing in my chest, like skipping every other beat. Tyler didn't answer right away. His gaze stayed fixed on the fire, like the words were somewhere inside the flames. The silence stretched between us, heavy with something I couldn't name yet. I don't know," he said finally. "I've been thinking about stuff. About us. Us." That one syllable hit harder than I expected. I laughed, but it came out nervous. "Ty, we've been friends for, 3 years? You're allowed to think about me." "Not like that," he said, and this time he did look at me. And God, that look. It wasn't flirty or playful or anything I could joke my way out of. It was raw, unfiltered. Like he'd taken off some mask I didn't even know he was wearing. "I've been thinking about what it would be like to kiss you," he said, almost like it hurt to admit, "and I can't stop." The room went so quiet I could hear the crackling of the fire, the occasional creak of the cabin settling around us. My body felt like it had turned to stone. My brain was trying to catch up, trying to make sense of what he was saying. "Tyler," I whispered, "you're drunk." "I'm not that drunk," he shot back. "I know what I'm saying." And then, softer, like he wasn't sure if he should say it, "I think I've wanted to say it for a while." I opened my mouth, then closed it again. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not now. Not with him. I'd spent years hiding how I felt about Tyler, burying it so deep I almost convinced myself it was gone. I stood up abruptly, pacing a few steps toward the kitchen before I could stop myself. "You don't get to do this," I said. "You don't get to drop that and act like it's no big deal." "I know it's a big deal," he said. "I wouldn't have said anything if it wasn't." I turned back to him, arms crossed, heart pounding. "Then what are you saying? That you're gay now? That this is a phase? That you want to experiment?" His expression tightened, like I'd hit a nerve. "I don't know what I am, okay? All I know is, I look at you, and I feel something I've never felt with anyone else." The honesty in his voice knocked the wind out of me. "I've had girlfriends," he continued. "I've done the whole straight guy routine. But when I'm with you, it's different. And I can't ignore it anymore." I sat down slowly, the edge of the couch cushion dipping beneath me. My hands were shaking. "So what happens now?" Tyler scooted closer, his knee brushing mine. "I don't know, but I'm tired of pretending." Then he paused. "Can I kiss you?" My breath caught. It should have been an easy answer. Say yes, lean in, let go. But this wasn't just any guy. This was Tyler, my best friend, the person I told everything to, except this. I nodded. And when he leaned in, it was slow, almost reverent. His lips touched mine like he was afraid he might break me. But he didn't. If anything, I felt like I was finally being put back together. The kiss was soft, warm, real. When we pulled apart, neither of us spoke right away. We just sat there, breathing each other in, the fire flickering behind us. "I've wanted to do that for a long time," he murmured, and all I could say was, "Me too." After that kiss, everything felt louder. My heartbeat, the fire crackling in the background, the silence between us. Tyler didn't pull away much. He stayed close, forehead almost touching mine, like he was trying to make sure I didn't vanish. Like maybe he thought if he moved too fast, I'd change my mind. But I wasn't going anywhere. Still, there were 1,000 questions crowding my brain, and I couldn't ignore them forever. "You're sure this isn't just a moment?" I asked carefully. Tyler leaned back, rubbing a hand over his mouth. "You mean, am I going to wake up tomorrow and regret it?" I nodded, afraid to hear the answer. He didn't look away. "No," he said. "I don't regret it. I've been thinking about this for weeks, maybe longer. That stunned me more than the kiss had." "For weeks?" He nodded slowly. At first I thought I was just being weird. Like maybe I was lonely or something. But then you'd laugh at some stupid joke, or you'd fall asleep on the couch and I'd catch myself watching you breathe, and I just couldn't unfeel it. I stared at him, searching for any sign that this was a joke, some prank, anything. But his eyes were serious, nervous, a little scared even. "You have no idea how hard it's been to keep it in," he admitted. "I didn't want to screw things up between us." I exhaled, trying to wrap my head around it. "I've wanted you for so long, Tyler," I said, the words coming out without permission. But I told myself it would never happen, that you were straight, that I'd ruin everything if I said anything. His eyes softened. "And now?" I swallowed. "Now I don't know what's real." He reached out, took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "This is real," he said. "I don't have a label for it. I don't know what it means long term, but I know I want to be here. With you. Whatever that looks like." It felt like my lungs were working again for the first time in months. Outside, snow had started falling, quiet, soft flakes drifting past the windows. Inside, it was warm and strange and charged. Tyler pulled the blanket off the couch and scooted closer. "Come here," he said. And just like that, I let him pull me in again. We didn't kiss. Not this time. We just sat there, pressed together under the blanket, our legs tangled up, the firelight flickering across the ceiling. Eventually, I leaned my head on his shoulder. His arm went around me instinctively. It wasn't even intimate. It was just safe. Like maybe we didn't have to figure everything out all at once. Like maybe this wasn't the end of our friendship, but the start of something new. At some point, I must have dozed off, because the next thing I remember was waking up in the dark, head still on Tyler's chest, his fingers lightly stroking my arm. "You awake?" he whispered. "Yeah." He paused, then said, almost nervously, "You want to sleep in my bed tonight?" I didn't even hesitate. "Yeah," I whispered back. "I do." The bedroom was freezing. I didn't notice it at first, not with the haze of warmth from the fire still clinging to my skin, and Tyler's hand guiding me down the short hallway, but when he opened the cabin door and we stepped inside, the chill hit me. No heater, no carpet, just creaky wood floors and a twin-size bed tucked under a slanted ceiling. He let me go for just a second to grab an extra blanket from the closet, and already I missed the weight of his touch. The room was barely lit, only a bit of light from the fire down the hall, and yet it felt like I could see everything. Tyler's nervous glance over his shoulder, the way he hesitated before pulling back the covers, the tiny tremble in his hand as he tossed a pillow onto the far side of the mattress. "You sure you're okay with this?" he asked quietly. "I wouldn't be here if I wasn't," I said. He nodded, still looking unsure, like he wasn't afraid I'd leave, but maybe afraid of what might happen if I didn't. We climbed into the bed awkwardly, careful not to touch at first. There wasn't room not to, though. Our legs bumped. His elbow brushed mine. The silence stretched long and heavy until finally, without a word, he reached over and placed his hand on my chest. Just his hand. Warm. Tentative. Then he said, almost a whisper, "Can I hold you?" I turned to face him. "You don't have to ask." He pulled me in slowly, like he'd never done this before, like he was figuring it out as he went. One arm under my neck, one wrapped around my waist. Our legs tangled, and my head rested just below his chin. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't about being closer. It was just him, warm and solid and close. "You okay?" he asked, after a few minutes of silence. I nodded against his chest. "Yeah, you?" He hesitated. Then, "I haven't stopped shaking since I kissed you." I pulled back slightly, just enough to see his face. "Why?" "Because this matters," he said, simply. "And I'm terrified I'm gonna mess it up." "You're not," I told him. "You're not messing anything up." He held me tighter. After that, we just lay there for a while. The wind outside picked up, making the trees creak against the cabin walls. But inside, we were warm. Steady. Everything outside of that moment faded into a quiet blur. I felt his fingers on my back, slow and rhythmic, like he was trying to memorize the shape of me. And eventually, sleep found us both. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was filtering through the frosted window, and Tyler was still holding me like he had never let go. I woke up to the sound of birds. Not an alarm, not a phone buzzing, just that slow morning chorus you only get in the woods. The kind that makes the world feel a little softer, safer. It took me a second to realize where I was. Warm, tucked under two heavy blankets, Tyler's arms slung lazily across my waist. He was still asleep, his breath soft and steady against the back of my neck. And for one strange, perfect moment, I didn't question anything. It wasn't a dream. I stayed there for a while, not moving, afraid that even shifting would somehow wake him up and break whatever spell we were under. But eventually, I rolled over carefully, just enough to see his face, eyes closed, hair a total mess. He looked younger like this, vulnerable in a way he never let people see. Then his eyes opened. He blinked a few times before focusing on me. There was no panic, no confusion, just this soft, sleepy smile that made my chest tighten. "Hey," he murmured. "Hey." He glanced at the window, then back at me. "Did you sleep okay?" I nodded. "Better than I have in weeks." He let out a breath, like he'd been holding it all night. Good. We stayed there, quiet again. It wasn't awkward. If anything, it was weird how not awkward it felt. Like we'd been doing this for years and just forgot to mention it. But eventually, reality crept in. as it always does. "What does this mean?" I asked, the words barely louder than a whisper. Tyler looked at me for a long time before answering. "I don't know yet. That should have scared me. It should have made me pull away. But it didn't, because he reached out and took my hand, threading our fingers together under the blanket. But I know I don't want last night to be a one-time thing," he said. "I want to figure it out. With you." My throat tightened. "Even if it's complicated?" He nodded. "Especially if it's complicated." We finally got out of bed an hour later, only because the cabin was freezing and we needed to relight the fire. Tyler insisted on doing it himself, claiming he had Boy Scout instincts, which mostly meant he used half a box of matches and still asked me to hold the kindling. We made coffee in mismatched mugs, ate cereal straight from the box, and talked about nothing. Movies we hated, professors we loved, how weird it was to be in the woods with no reception. But underneath all that, there was something different now. A closeness that hadn't existed before. The way his hand brushed mine and stayed there. The way he looked at me like I wasn't just his friend anymore. Later, while we were out walking by the lake, he stopped suddenly and turned to me. "You don't have to keep this a secret, you know," he said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, if this becomes something, if we become something, I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. I'm not going to hide it." That hit me harder than I expected. "You're not scared?" He shrugged. "Terrified, but I'm more scared of going back to pretending." I couldn't say anything to that. I just stepped forward and kissed him, quick and quiet, the kind you share in public when words aren't enough. It wasn't fireworks or movie-style music swelling in the background. It was better than that. It was real. The rest of the weekend passed in that weird, slow, fast way time seems to work when everything suddenly means more. Every glance, every brush of hands, every time one of us said the other's name. That first night felt like crossing a line we'd both danced around for years without realizing it. And now that we were on the other side, neither of us wanted to go back. We didn't talk too much about what it all meant. Not because we were avoiding it, but because there was something unspoken in how we moved together now. Like the language between us had shifted. Evolved. We went hiking the next afternoon. There was still snow in patches along the trail, melting into mud, but we didn't care. Tyler kept reaching for my hand whenever the path got slick, his grip firm, grounding. At the summit, we sat on a rock overlooking the frozen lake and ate granola bars in silence. At one point, he pulled out his phone just to take a photo, not of the view, but of me. I raised an eyebrow, and he just grinned. "For later," he said. That night, we didn't sleep right away. We lay in bed, facing each other in the dark. Our legs tangled, his thumb brushing circles into the back of my hand. "Can I tell you something kind of embarrassing?" he asked. "Always." I was scared you'd say no. I laughed softly. "To what? Sleeping in the same bed?" "No," he said. "To all of it. To me. I was scared I was reading it wrong. That you'd pull away. That I'd wreck everything." I squeezed his hand. I was scared too. He didn't answer right away, just shifted closer, forehead pressing gently against mine. "But I'm glad I kissed you," he whispered, "even if I was shaking like an idiot." "You're lucky I didn't pass out," I whispered back. That made him laugh, and God, I loved that sound. We kissed again, slow and steady, like there was no rush, like we had time. The next morning, we cleaned the cabin, packed up the car, and started the drive back. The roads were clear, sun glinting off the last of the ice. But the air between us had changed. We weren't the same people who drove up 2 days ago. Tyler kept reaching over to rest his hand on my thigh. Not saying anything, just checking in. We talked a little more seriously on the drive, about what this might look like, about how we didn't need to label anything yet, but we didn't want it to be a secret either. "I'm not going to pretend this didn't happen," he said again, firmer this time. "I'm not hiding how I feel." I nodded. "Me either." He glanced at me, smiled, then turned the music up slightly. The rest of the drive was quiet, but not in a bad way. It was the kind of quiet that feels like trust. That night, back at the apartment, we both hesitated by our bedroom doors. His room on the left, mine on the right. He scratched the back of his neck. "Do I get to sleep in your bed tonight?" he asked, almost shy again. I opened the door without answering, and he followed me in. It felt different, being back in my room. Maybe it was the familiarity, the way the overhead light flickered for a second before settling in, the posters on the wall, the faint smell of detergent on my pillow. But mostly, it was that Tyler was here, in this space, not the cabin, not some cozy wilderness bubble, but in our real life, and he hadn't flinched. He dropped his bag by the door, stepped out of his sneakers, and sat down on the edge of my bed like he'd done it 100 times before. Except this time I could tell it meant something. We didn't rush. We didn't strip down or collapse into each other like a movie scene. We just sat, shoulder to shoulder, quiet. Our fingers slowly laced together. "I keep waiting for this to feel like a dream," he said, voice barely above a whisper. I looked at him. "Same, but it doesn't," he added, turning his head toward me. "It feels steady." That word stuck with me. Steady. Because that's what it was. Not perfect, not easy, but solid. Grounded. Something I could trust. We lay down again that night, just like we had at the cabin. Him curled behind me, arm around my waist. I remember thinking, as I drifted off, that I'd never slept better in my life. And the weeks that followed, they weren't some fairy tale. There were awkward moments, long conversations, questions we didn't always have answers to. But through it all, Tyler never wavered. He held my hand in public the first time at a campus art show. No big announcement. Just reached for me while we looked at a weird sculpture that looked vaguely like a melted cactus, and didn't let go when a couple of guys from our psych class walked by. He kissed me in the back row of a movie theater, totally unplanned, popcorn between us, like it was just the most natural thing in the world. And when his brother called one night while we were curled up on the couch and asked if he was still seeing that girl from last fall, Tyler just said, "Nah, things changed. I'm seeing someone else now." He glanced at me as he said it, squeezed my leg, didn't flinch, didn't hide. I wasn't just a secret or a phase or something he needed to figure out. I was someone he wanted. And yeah, eventually we had the talk, the "what are we" conversation. It happened on a Tuesday night, eating takeout on the floor of our living room because the table was buried in laundry. "I don't need labels," he said, "but I want to be yours." I smiled. "You already are." And that was it. That was how we started. No big declarations, no Instagram announcements. Just two guys who spent 3 years dancing around each other, finally realizing they'd been in the same rhythm all along. And now we fall asleep in the same bed. We argue about dumb things like which brand of oat milk tastes the least like regret. He still sings off key when he thinks I'm not listening, and I still pretend not to notice just so I can hear him do it again. It's not always easy, but it's always real. And for the first time in a long time, that's more than enough. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.